Well, hello to the room. It is so good to be here once again at the Science Circle. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the invitation, Chan. I just love coming to this group. I talk about you guys all the time whenever I make a presentation on virtual world learning. I typically use the Science Circle as an example of the very best that in-world has to offer. So thank you all for keeping this going. Thank you for having me here today. We're going to have an interesting topic today, empowering our low watt brains. And this is something I've been dealing with for decades in research and observation in the communication space. I've been an international journalist and an educator and a crisis counselor and worked in economic development and always trying to answer the question, how do we best connect with one another for our common good and our common growth? And how might we immerse ourselves into the mindsets of others? That's our topic for today. And one way to penetrate another's mind, I think, is to better understand how our own brains work. And our brains operate on a surprisingly, amazingly small bit of voltage, just 12 watts of power. That's it, Vic. 12 watts. That explains a lot why we call somebody a dim bulb. Well, we're all dim bulbs. It's less wattage that it takes to light a refrigerator bulb. And this presentation is going to look at our basic brain function, how we accommodate these sizable gaps in our perceptions based on that low wattage. And our brains use a very wide range of tactics to eliminate the power load on our brain in a number of ways. Some are saying it's 20 watts. Well, maybe along with our weight, our wattage has improved over the years. I hope that's true. And we're also going to look at some ways that we can effectively use primers and prompts to help direct the cognitive abilities of others and ourselves to get the best function out of that limited brain power. Let's define just a couple of quick terms here at the top. It's a primer. We'll be talking about those, and they can help set the tone or ambience in a room or in the interactions between individuals in one-on-one. A primer will set a mood, a frame of mind. A primer also helps us to establish a fundamental operating system, a belief system, at least in one specific situation, that given situation at the moment. A prompt is an action or a suggestion that helps promote a behavior or a belief. A prompt can be a primer can be a prompt, but they aren't necessarily both at the same time. As we progress through some of the tips that I'm going to be sharing today, some of the tactics, we should remember that primers and prompts are not best used to misuse a limited brain focus. It's not to take advantage of people, but it's to help us to accommodate the limits that they may have in their brain power. And the key question we're going to be considering here is how we might better prime the pump of our limited brains, looking at how just a few drops of added primer can result in torrents and torrents of gush of attention if we do it right. Just a little bit of primer, just a thimbleful of primer can give us gallons and gallons of gushing. Here's a bit of what we know about our brains. I am not a neurologist, but I know how to borrow from them. The average adult brain has some 100 billion neurons. If you're going to check that, maybe the data has been updated a little bit here. Each one of the billions of neurons, they make up 10,000 10,000 connections with other neurons, each one of those, meaning we have more possible permutations and combinations of brain activity than there are elementary particles in the universe. This is counting one, two, oh, one just died on me. Uh-oh, I'm running short today. Anyway, it's all pretty impressive the way our brains work, the capabilities, the capacities of our brain, even if it is just powered with 12 watts or 20 watts of energy. Do you remember this movie? This was a while ago, Lucy. I really like this movie. She was an unwilling drug mule, and she had these mind altering chemicals in her system through a ruptured bag. That's how it happened. And it ultimately led to 100% of her brain use. And with her maxed out mind power, what did Lucy deduce? Well, she said there is no such thing as one plus one. That's a construct that the totality of all existence is so unfathomable that we must scale it down so our feeble human minds can even get an inkling of it. That's what she found out, realized with 100% of brain power. It's this sort of total perspective vortex, if you know that context of the ultimate torture, where we are infinitesimally small dots on an infinitesimally small dot. It can be a warping perspective, and it turns out, of course, it's not really true that humans only use 10% of their brain. I've been hearing that all my life. Something that's been called into question by neurologists, including Barry Gordon. I got some quotes here at Hopkins School of Medicine. He says we're using all the parts of our brain all the time, and this 10% myth is so wrong that it's laughable. I see some laughs here happening in the chat. Still, I do feel that we could make much better use of our own brain, and we're going to be looking at some ways to do that. Another source we've been getting data is the brain research was the $300 million project dedicated to the Brain Initiative, mapping our minds and seeking better understanding and ways to treat brain disorders such as Alzheimer's and schizophrenia, uh, top, and autism and epilepsy. Also, DARPA, very interested in neuroplasticity to stimulate regions of the brain to enhance our learning. And that can be achieved by stimulating peripheral nerves easily and painlessly through the skin. We're getting really good at this. We're going to be downloading our brains. We already got the avatars. Now we're just going to inject our brains into them uh, uh, so that they can speak and display facial expressions and even continue to learn. Our digital intelligence may even be able to communicate with our great great grandchildren, visiting us and updating us on their progeny. Perhaps even more promising, if we can download contents from our brains, I think we could begin to upload contents, perhaps languages, engineering degrees, physics education. Hopefully, that's not going to be too far away either. Interesting question. Does power disrupt the brain? I would imagine that it does. We are also learning much, much more about how brain memory works. I always thought of it that our experiences were kind of recorded like a video camera, and we just played it back again with frame by frame playback, and we could freeze frame a memory. But really, it doesn't work that way at all. Instead, memory reconstruction is more like piecing Legos together. We might pull together the different pieces, such as, well, was it real life or a virtual experience? There's one piece. Was it a happy or sad event? We pull in that piece. Was I speaking with a male or a female? Was there music playing? Was there somehow food involved? And we can feel all these pieces coming together as we reconstruct a memory in our heads if we really work at it. And that's kind of how AI works, according to my understanding of it. Is they've got these towers of knowledge, and we pull from the different towers depending upon the prompt and the situation. Turns out, well, our brains kind of work that way as well. And these memories, well, of course, are going to be imperfect and constantly changing depending on the configurations that we're reassembling. And rather than something fixed and permanent, it turns out our memories are permeable and malleable and evolving, and we can actually edit and reframe our memories and maybe even make them more accurate. Our brains, we simply don't have the storage and processing power to record and play back faithful reproduction. So we do this reconstruction in our head. And to do that, well, we're always looking for ways to simplify. Our brain is looking for shortcuts. And trying to bring very specific detail with our limited attention. It means we have anything outside our field gets distorted once we get to the periphery of our limited attention bandwidth. And you can try it here to the left and right on this slide. You can recognize, oh, the younger faces of Angelina Jolie and Leonardo DiCaprio. But if you instead focus your attention on the star right in the center, you see how their lovely faces begin to distort on the edges of your attention. So we have a very narrow band where we can devote our full focus. And this perceptual distortion, well, it impacts our awareness and our memories and much of what's going on around us. This inattentional blindness for what happens outside the spotlight of our attention. So we reduce the demands on our attentions, our memories, our low watt brains, and we adapt. I just love following the chat. You can tell whenever I switch over to the chat because my brain only does one thing at a time, and it does a little bit of a burp when I'm looking at, especially when I see Phil post something here. He's always got some noteworthy item, and I do. I save all this chat and I do review it after the session. If you have a question or a comment, I promise I will get to it. I really enjoy these. It's one of my favorite things to do after the session is over. Just go back and look at all your chat. So we have found that there is a distinct gender difference in brain function. Women's brains have been found to be better wired for dealing with the faces and colors of socializing, while men have been shown in general to be better at physical and spatial tasks. That's what we're finding out now with these 3D immersive platforms, as women are actually getting a little seasick from the motion of it. That's about half of our population there may have perceptual difficulties. I'm sure you've been seeing reports on that as well. Chan, who is bad with both faces and names, me too, Chan. There's tricks for that, and we could talk about that. Here's another example of the differences between men and women, male and female, in our perceptions, the way our brains are wired. So, how many shades of red do you see here? You may already know this trick, which case it's cheating if you can tell me, but how many shades of red there? In general, what we're going to see, we see four, we see five. This is fun to see. 2 to 3, but there are more. Yes, Vic, knowing fully well, I wouldn't be asking the question if there wasn't something to illustrate, and there is. Men typically see 3 to 5 shades of red. I see four myself. I don't see five. Women who have developed this color differentiation through millennia of evolution. We have an evolved Chan in the room who sees the full seven shades here. And Most women do. It's interesting to note that 8% of men are colorblind, while only 4.4% of women are colorblind. Not even 1%, not even half of 1%. If you're still wondering, here's a breakdown. Maybe this will show you a little better. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Chan, you get an A plus chance on them all. Mike, doing pretty good with that. Mike, five or six. I see four. Well, thank you for this a little experiment. Let's talk about some other ways that our mind twists our perception. Men, for example, are good at packing the car trunk for family vacations. The men's brain is better wired for envisioning spatial shifts, and this better ability at assessing bearings and differences. This was enhanced over eons of how close that man-eating tiger and lion might be. Those of us that could perceive better, we managed to avoid being the dinner for the night. Uh, and those who judge these things best, well, they are the ones who survived. You know how this works. I don't need to explain evolution to you. A key takeaway from all of this is really we are not all that different from one another in spite of some cultural differences and aspirations. In fact, the way our brains function, we're almost identical. There's a good old joke, Vic. We I really I can't help it. I see a new comic come in. I just gotta look. So the question in my mind has been, well, I wonder how different animals experience and thinking process, how different it is from us. And really, it turns out we're not so different there either. How they think, how they feel. And we can make some really valid assumptions based on our own experience. For example, our neurons, looking at them under a microscope, they're identical to those of a crayfish. And a crayfish also responds, interestingly, in much of the same way to life's challenges and tortures. You give a crayfish an electric microshock, and they retreat to their their burrows, and we can all relate to that, I think. But then you give them the same anti-anxiety drugs that we humans take, and they come back out of their hole just like just like we may. And it's a wonder that we might further be like in the minds of of these supposedly lower ice forms. Whiskey does that. We might consider their other behaviors are really not so different from our own octopi. Well, they use tools and they recognize human faces. Sea otters and orcas teach their young and even mentor the young of other otters and orcas, not even their own. And elephants, this is interesting. Elephants can tell the difference between tourists and hunters simply by the tone and attitude of their voices. Pretty smart creatures out there. And even the tardigrade, the lowly tardigrade with its small brain clusters of neurons, just this little wad of neurons, they may share similar motives: preservation, perpetuation, moments of pleasure. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he pointed out on a recent Cosmo revisit, that tardigrades even hug. There they are hugging right there. I grabbed that right off of the screen with my camera. Thank you, Neil. And all of our minds, you know, animal and human, so rich with our aspirations and our experiences, but we're also very short on processing bandwidth. And well, some of us make use of those limitations for nefarious ends. We got pickpockets out there that know how to distract our mind, our attention. We have magicians that misdirect and divert us. And marketers use it too. In fact, I include much of this material on primers and prompts in my marketing lectures. So let's learn how to use our understanding of our limitations to better our own performance. And yes, politicians do the art of misdirection. And by bettering our own performance, maybe we can be a better service to others. And there's a few things we can do to make sure we maximize our abilities. Well, we can sleep well. I could use another hour myself right now. We nap when necessary. Oh, naps are wonderful, something we've lost here in the United States, but much of the world still views naps as a positive thing to do. We eat well, we exercise right, we practice attention and concentration exercises, such as playing chess, is a wonderful way to stimulate your brain. We tell jokes, we play, we have fun, we enjoy the arts, we hang with friends, we enjoy music, we nap. Yes, we do. Naps are very restorative. And well, how do we optimize our interaction with other brains? There's the challenge right there. Not only figuring out our brains, but how do we connect with others? And the first step is to get their attention, and that can be hard with all the other distractions and our limited bandwidth. Well, psychologists, sociologists, advertising directors, marketers, they all talk about the 12 fundamental appeals that we can use for tapping into people's awareness, security, health, beauty, importance, pleasure, and so on. I do have a video lecture on all these appeals. I use them in my classes. And you can get, by the way, you can get these slides. There's a PDF of these slides with active links in it. You just click that little black sign there, stage right, or you can also click the little eye on the screen here. That will give you the slides. And there are links if you would like to watch a video on these appeals at use. It's just a lecture. I try to make it somewhat interesting. Nothing and nobody in any of these resources is trying to sell you anything. That's not why we're here, is it? And I know there's a lot of other educators in the room. I always enjoy talking to other educators. We live in a different world where we're frequently motivated by simply trying to uplift those around us rather than taking their money. It's a very different way of looking at the world, but I like it. Anyway, nothing on any of these slides, none of these links is trying to take your money. Let's look at a few other interesting observations here. We have to be wary of overwhelming others. I know it is so easy to do. Next thing you know, they're giving you their credit card number once you have them bewildered and overwhelmed. It's not that hard to do. And if we've overwhelmed, in fact, quite often that may be an intentional tactic. You want to overwhelm them with details so they don't focus in too much on the corners that you may be trying to hide. Here's one interesting study, and they set up a shopper display with 6 different flavors of jam. That was their first setup. And 40% of the shoppers stopped to taste, and 30% of those bought a pick of their favorite jam. And it was a very successful display. However, when the choices were increased to 24 flavors, you think you would have even more success. Well, indeed, more people stopped to look because it was more attractive, but only 3% actually made a choice. Look at the drop there, simply because they were overwhelmed with choice. So, what the studies found is that you provide people 2 to 3 meaningful choices. That is the optimal spread. You start giving them too many choices, and they're just going to shut down. And that's why I like shopping at Costco so much. They have fewer choices among usually some higher quality items. It makes it much easier to get in and out of the store. Here's another example of our limited brains. It's how we're impacted by sensation transference, or how we can feel and taste what it is that we see. And here's an example: 7-Up marketers. It's a soda pop here in the United States. I think it's worldwide, isn't it? You can get 7-Up around the world. And what they did was they altered the color on the can. They shifted the color to more of a yellow end to focus the lemon lime spectrum. And sure enough, customers were calling and writing in that they wanted their drink to taste more limey and not so lemony now that they changed the formula. But really, all they did was they changed the color, they didn't change the formula at all, but that sensation transference made us feel like it had changed. Or margarine, here is a case study on that. It was failing as a project, as a product, because it just didn't look all that appetizing. It was colored white originally. It looked more like fat than it did like butter. So what they did was Cheshkin, this marketer from Ukraine, came to the United States and he simply said, let's add some yellow to it. Let's make it look more like butter. And because of that, in taste tests, people suddenly started liking it, enjoying it. And to this day, you can still find margarine on the store shelf. Educators in the room, here is a frightening study here on just how sharp and accurate our perceptions can be, even with our limited brain power. In this study, well, this rattled me as a teacher. The students were shown just short, silent clips of an unknown instructor. They hadn't seen him before, and they were able and asked to evaluate the teaching skills of this instructor based just on a short, silent clip. And what happened was, and they even brought the clips. Let's see, they were 5-second clips, and they brought them on down to 2 seconds of video. And then they asked the students to write an evaluation of this instructor. And it turned out the results were virtually the same results as students who had taken that instructor for an entire semester. We are so good at summing up and forming impressions based on so little input. 2 seconds. Boy, does that put pressure on us to make a good first impression when we walk into the classroom, doesn't it? Here is one of the most effective ways to connect our brain to another is simply to resonate with that brain at the same frequency. I know that sounds a little new agey, but here is a good example here. A violin on one side of the room, if it plays a note, a violin on the other side of the room is going to start vibrating in a sympathetic vibration. And it's a wonderful thing to see the impact we can have on one another simply by matching our resonance, our vibration, our vibes with one another. There's a good California word for you. And of course, we also have to be aware of dissonance, the exact opposite effect, isn't it? If our vibrations are out of harmony, if we're getting a bad vibe from somebody, I'm going to get muted here. Okay. I hope my avatar is looking good today. I forgot to brush my hair before the session. I hope I'm okay. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about some communication tips. That's my background. I've been a professor of communications for 25 years now. How do we best connect with our audience? And one of my most popular lectures is simply a writing exercise. How do we connect with our writing with the limited attention spans of key decision makers, of our casual readers and our students? We need to grab their attention right off the top. We need to make it stick. Okay. We also can use some writing tools to help this through. And this is about a 45-minute video on the website that I talked about. It's the resources for my students. You can access it through the links here. I think that may be even a direct link to it right there. It is, course, on this slide. We'll get you all my lecture videos. This just quickly going through the steps for writing, the 6 best steps. None of them deal with spelling or punctuation. Is step 1, use resonant characters, flesh and blood people that your audience can relate to, such as scientists and academics and educators and virtual avatars, just real world creatures and people that you can imagine going to lunch for. And that's going to connect much better than some abstract like quarter profits. That doesn't connect with people at all. And then we use action verbs, something that they can visualize, and it stimulates the brain. They have to picture something happening. Uh, and then we want to make sure that those actions and the characters are close together so we keep a close connection in their mind. Who is doing what? So we keep our actions and our characters within 8 words. Closer, the better. One word, even better still. The clown laughs, for example, would be an action and a character right up against each other. Okay, I am not going to get distracted by the chat. I am not, even though I see Phil just made a post. Oh, I am. How about avatars? Given a lab coat who tries to convince me of something. Well, there you go. It gets back again to our perceptions, doesn't it? We're talking about connectors here, taking your readers by the hand. We want to use lots of connectors. It's therefore and thus and because of and in light of this. Each one of those helps navigate our reader navigate through our text, and that's critical. Taking by the hand and walking them through the thicket of your prose. Funny and old squirrels arguing over there. Okay, lots of connectors. I promise I'm going to quit getting distracted here. Quit writing funny, interesting stuff. Okay. What else are we gonna do? We're gonna use explicit connectors. We're gonna link our flow from old information to new information. We cringe. We reflectively cringe at something new. I just figured out what's old. Don't make me learn something else. So we want to phrase it, starting with the old, comfortable information, and then bringing them into nearer, easier to understood new ideas. If I work through all of these, yes, and then use the problem solution action paradigm. Boy, you're getting an entire, this is actually a 6 week course. I'm giving it to you in 60 seconds here. I'm really rushing through this, but then the problem solution action paradigm. This is one of the biggest problems I hear from students is they know what they want to say. They just don't know how to formulate it. They don't know what architecture to use. Well, it's pretty simple. Just start out. We have a problem here. Here's a possible solution. And now let's implement that solution with an action plan starting next week. And once you use that format, we have a problem here. We're losing workers. Solution, let's create a worker retention program. Action paradigm, let's bring in a consultant for training next week. And suddenly your memo, your dissertation will write itself, doesn't it? Doesn't a dissertation start with a problem statement? At least that's how it used to start. And again, you can download the PDF with active links just by clicking the little eye on the screen here. Lots of challenges are connecting with diverse audience. Well, that's the topic of my own doctoral work. Research is how to resonate across our common brain limitations, across cultural gulfs, how to connect with people around the world, regardless of their age or background. That is always what has intrigued me and ways to do that better. I have a 150-page dissertation. You can read that. There's a link to it on this slide. Or it's been published. You can read revised and shortened versions of it. Basically, it was an international program. I was hired back in 2000, University of California, to teach communications to international students simply because I'd been living in Russia and Ukraine for years. So they figured I'd had some background on this. And it just really intrigued me, this room full of bright minds from all over the world. And I started saying that there were certain messages and discussions and topics in the room that would create dissonance and resonance. And I started tracking all that. It was a course in advertising using commercials. So we had plenty of fodder to look at, and was looking at what really created dissonance or a bad vibe in the room was humor, top discussions about sex, religion, and politics. Even though it might turn lively, nonetheless, it did turn antagonistic, and there'd be a dissonance. More importantly, is looking for what resonates, what unites us when we start talking about these things, regardless of our background. Certain themes like babies, when your baby pictures come out, or pictures of people bring out their pictures of their pets that they missed home in the class of international students. And they would all start sharing pictures with one another. And one student would actually do live streaming to her pet back in Germany. And you just, it's such a different feeling in the room when you start talking about these things that resonate, relationships, a birth, life, death cycle, water imagery. And I have examples of this. You can also find a video of this, bringing in some commercial examples. And you just notice it's almost instant, a change in the room. In fact, I remember one day it was during presidential election, and it was just so nasty. It was the Bush Gore election. And all like we tend to think our current days are the worst, but it was pretty bad then too. And the tension in the room was just awful, and they were yelling at one another. And there was a pregnant woman in the room, very pregnant, about 8 months along. And I'd simply said, "You realize that her baby can hear all this and feel the tension in the room?" And suddenly it dropped in an instant, in a flash. And boy, did that make me really appreciate the power of resonant imagery and themes, and the control, the primer and the prompt control of it. Give it a try. In fact, you already know, any teachers in the room, you know how easy it is to lose control of a happy classroom with just one bad comment. And then there's ways of bringing it back again. And we might even extend and extrapolate what works so well among humans across evolutionary, biologically, sociologically, entirely different creatures, including species on other worlds. And that would be an interesting study, just to see how much of the traits that we carry with one another resonate even across galactic gulfs. And some of those might be, actually, I did a presentation on this some years ago for the Science Circle. I was asked to do this. It was a Great Minds series here in Southern California. And they asked if you could apply this to culture. Can we apply it to aliens? And sure enough, some of the interesting areas to look at that we might have in common: reproduction. Is going to be something we most likely share. Family bonds, caring for one another, soccer. Wouldn't that be a great way to to bridge the gulf? Let's just simply have some games with another. Olympics. Suddenly, if you're the best in the world, suddenly that's going to put you pretty far down the list, I think, galactically. No grant money anytime soon. No. I well, I'll tell you, I do think there is some research money in transcultural relations, especially in business, and it's just never really appealed to me to go after the money of it. And I'm sure it's out there somewhere. Environmental awareness, governance, economic systems, self defense. I think these are the same kinds of issues that we're going to be facing wherever we are in the universe. So let's return back to our original question up front: how we might better prime the pump of our brains, and just how a few drops can result in gushing and gushing and gushing. Business primer. Here's an interesting study. Again, you can get all these links and references, resources here, just by downloading the PDF. Uh, this was items based in a room and what kind of response it got simply by being led into a room after being exposed to certain kinds of items. And then they were asked to divvy up money among the others present. So, in a room that had been decorated with neutral items such as lamps and fans and vases, well, the subject split the money into even piles. They hadn't been prompted or primed to think any differently. However, if the room had been decorated with business items such as briefcases and office supplies and appointment books, only 50% of the time it dropped by half the percent of people that divided the money evenly and those who kept a larger share for themselves. So well, we keep what we keep around us, what we have in the just the decorations in the room can prime our behaviors and our mindsets. Here's a good suggestion here by David McRaney. It's a primer against insecurity. He says we often like to maintain this illusion that we are superior to others and the challenges in life, and that's how we deal with it. The arrogant bully sort that really what they're trying to mask is their own security. You know that kind of person. So he says the best way to overcome a difficult task is simply to imagine it that we can maintain our superiority. And then our illusory superiority, this kicks in and convinces us that we are capable to get the task done. It's a tactic most parents might be familiar with. Fake it till you make it, I think, is kind of a summary of that. Also, as an earlier writing tip mentioned in those six writing tips, people like to feel in comfortable territory before venturing beyond the threshold into something new that's deeply wired into us at our most reptilian brain level. And this is called a familiarity fondness, where we can anchor a new idea to a familiar context, and this goes back to leading gently from the old information to fresh information. That's a nice bridge there. Another, boy, already up to slide 43. People see my deck of slides here. They think, oh my God, you're going to go on for 3 hours. We're already to slide 43. By the way, this is a 3 hour lecture on primers and prompts. I am reducing it quite a bit here, skipping over quite a bit of the detail. Fake it till you make it. There it is. One of the most important small things. Celebrate small victories, and this will lead to larger things. As above, so below. I think you are right on that. What we find if we can master things at the lower level, and it certainly boosts our confidence to take it to the higher. Thank you for sharing that, Phil. Bias for the good. This is a similar notion to a consistency bias. It's a tactic I used. I was a probation officer for a while, or a teacher, or a parent. If you want people to demonstrate good characteristics, the characteristics you'd like them to possess, you treat them as if they already have them. If they already are that way, people will act as they believe themselves to be, and they tend to believe how they are at the moment, in that moment, is how they always are. And this is a little brain trick that we can take advantage of. If we can convince them that they're good, honest people, that they have compassion and care for others in that moment, well, that will expand and carry over, hopefully, into other aspects of their life. Echo chamber here. Here's another good example. Actually, I did this test in a classroom once after reading this study. It's about priming words, and this is a real easy test to run. You simply have your students or your colleagues try to make short sentences, rearranging some scrambled terms here. Shoes, give, replace, old, the, sky, the seamless gray is, bingo, sing, play. Now simply rearrange those phrases into something else. It doesn't make it matter if it makes sense or not. Well, it turns out what you see here are priming words, old priming words, such as gray and bingo and wrinkled and silently. And the students that worked on this particular set of words, they walked out of the room more significantly, more noticeably slower than students who had been exposed to simply random grouping of words. So we might try using these priming words: trust, dedication, commitment, honesty, love, happiness, kindness. Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell's book. For the most part, I agree with you there, Phil. He takes it a little too far sometimes, but hey, it's hard to fill a book. It's hard to sell a book. Uh, so there you go. And these words matter, especially in advertising. Do you remember Subliminal Man? Anybody here go back that far? Saturday Night Live, Subliminal Man. That was a good routine. Okay, so these words that we use, and we also need to watch the words that we use on ourselves, don't we? The negative words, anger, indifference, I suck, I'm a failure, I'm such an idiot. And then those we incorporate. Okay, one last thought here before we start to wind up. I've been throwing a lot at you, shoveling it with a pitchfork, I know. One last prompt here. This is one of my own favorites. It's called Pay It Forward. Someone in a fast food drive, maybe you've heard of this study, they pay for the order of the car behind them. The car has made their order and they already know what the amount is, so they pay it. And this caught on for a while with fast food lines in many states. It happens, yeah, Starbucks sometimes. I've seen it. So the incident of paying forward, it went as far from four incidents would be typical, all the way up to 24 cars at one time did this pay it forward thing. What a wonderful thing to pass on. You know, it's the same thing we may notice driving on the freeway, right? When people are driving angry and cutting people off and not letting them merge into the traffic, and you can just see that impacting the other drivers on the road. Well, simply extend a courtesy to somebody else. Slow down, let them merge in front of you, and then also watch. You can see that has an impact on the cars around. There's some actually fascinating studies on traffic and just somebody tapping their brake light on the freeway. What kind of impact? Miles and miles and miles back, they can trace this impact of our actions on one another. Taking turns, Wick. I wish I could follow this closer. And also, well, let's remember there is a lot of strength in those emotions that we might prime and prompt, and there's a good reason for that. Our logical, our rational side, our side is slow and methodical and plotting. But our reactions from our emotional brain and our heart are quick and instant and even intuitive. Those are the impressions that let you sum up an instructor in a 2 second impression. Our choices are typically emotional. We get a gut feeling, we get a gut reaction. We don't sit there and analyze how they're dressed, what their shoes are, what side their hair is parted on. We don't do that. And it takes the brain a lot less power to respond to an emotional appeal rather than a logical, rational appeal. Something to remember while we're giving lectures, I think. And our emotions, they radiate from us. That's what people are picking up on in those seconds is the emotions radiating from us like heat waves. Harriet Beecher Stowe, author of Uncle Tom's Cabin, she talks of a sympathetic influence that encircles every being, that we can touch others simply by being and not necessarily having to do anything. And that really, really appeals to a lazy guy like me. that we can have an influence simply by being ourselves, hopefully ourselves being a good self. Well, boy, I really did rush through that, didn't I? I just gave you a 3 hour lecture in 50 minutes. So here, as we wrap up, here's a few more links for you. If you download this PDF, more resources here on some of the topics we've covered, especially the wwmr.us. That's my research site. And if you hunt around enough, there's also a Google bar. If you're looking for something in particular, just do a quick search and it'll probably pop up for you. Do grab a link if you would like to our Educari. It's a nonprofit build here, and its sole purpose is to try to bring new people in, educators, administrators, academe students, to bring them in just to give them a really simplified first impression of what this is all about. But I invite you to go and take a look at what that looks like. In fact, I think we have a field trip coming up in June. Really look forward to having you come. Let me show you some of the new stuff we're doing. Most importantly, I will share with you some of the data I presented was the VWBPE Virtual World's Best Practices in Education, presented to them not too long ago on university response. And I've taught, 5, 6, currently an adjunct faculty for 5 different universities. I'm one of those road running guys. And I'll share what some comments that I have heard back from these over the years. And you know what a challenge it has been to bring outsiders in, especially in academia, that may look on this with disdain and ridicule, but it is changing. And I know this back in 2000 when I first started teaching UCSB for their international program, the international students would get very lonely during the week outside of class, and they weren't interacting well with Americans or one another. So we started a discussion board. Simply for them to share notes about, where they came from, what they like to do, the best places they found in Santa Barbara to visit. And it caught on. I had to get permission to do it from all the administrators up and down. I had to pay for it out of my own pocket. I had to host it. I had to put the time in it, and still got ridiculed by academes that this isn't serious education. This is just some little fun and game thing that actually makes us. But here it is, every year since 2000, they've had some online component, which of course now is Canvas and Blackboard. It's become institutionalized. So it was that same feeling I recall back in 2000, seeing the potential, the good out of this, suffering through the ridicule of my colleagues. Well, here it is, going through the same thing with virtual worlds over the last 10, 15 years. You all know what I'm talking about, but it is actually getting serious now. I think the administrators have accepted this is going to happen. This is not going to go away. And we better start looking at it. Of course, well, then all the carpetbaggers come in and people looking to make a fast kill off of it. We've kind of worked through that now, and now we've gone through that hype phase, and it's getting more into the practical. Well, let's actually look at how we might use these tools, and I'm going to share some of that with you. If you come and visit with me, perhaps I did see some of you there at the Virtual Worlds conference that we had. Thank you for that. I still see all. It's so nice to come in and see all the familiar names here. There's Mike, there's Sis, there's Max. All these names that I've been seeing. Dolly, Chan, of course. And if I go back wider, I know I'm going to see a whole lot more. And you people, really, you are the heroes that have made this happen. I can go out and talk about it and show, look, this is what's happening at the Science Circle. And what's good is I can come back in and see it's actually happening. It's getting bigger. It's getting better. And that makes me much more confident as I'm facing these very skeptical administrators that I have this touchstone that goes deep. I've been with the Science Circle for 15 years now and still seeing some of the same names. what a wonderful organization it is. And maybe, you know, when we're in the middle of something, it's hard to appreciate, I think, just what it is that we're doing. But I can tell you from the outside of the science circle looking in, when I show people what this is about, what virtual world learning can provide, how we can network with brilliant minds all over the world in a common setting. It amazes me sometimes that it's such a hard sell, but it is working out. It is coming together, and I hope you can come in June, and I'll share some of that with you. In the meantime, we have 5 minutes here till the top of the hour. I'm going to shut off my mic. I'll let the chat continue on. I'll take a quick look back at some of the comments here. If anybody else wants to make a quick comment or question that I've missed, now is a good time to enter it. It is a good audience here. Thank you for the turnout. What a great thing for you to do. Come share some of your Saturday with me. Okay, I'm just babbling and rambling on here. Thank you so much. I'm going to click off the mic. I will grab all the resources here, clear by spot. Last chance to grab a PDF file. And I hope to see you again in the very near future. Bye bye, everybody.